Hello. In the Crown of Aragon, 639 years ago, it was May 18th, 1387. My name is Jonathan Seyfried. I'm a PhD candidate in history at the University of New Mexico, and this is The Historian's Notebook, a podcast about how history gets made. Season 1 is titled Multcara Companiona. We're looking at a document from each day of the first year of the reign of King Joan I of Aragon and Queen Violante de Bar. Let's begin today's document. Today we have another document from Joan about hunting. Alright, so I have to admit this is not my favorite aspect of Joan. I mean, there's a lot of flaws in the man, but one of the things that he just really loves is hunting, and I'm just not that into it. I can, I guess, appreciate it from, I guess, a distant outsider's point of view of the kind of pageantry and the kind of confronting the natural world, whatever that quote-unquote natural world, and its rhythms and the beauty of animals that are predators and doing their thing, the athleticism of it. All right, I can try to connect with that, but it just does not pull on my heartstrings. Like, I really like the Troubadour stuff a whole lot more. I'm just more artsy. But I think when we're talking about medieval hunting, we have to remember that it was very artsy. Like, you were not roughing it when you were an elite person doing your sport of hunting. Yes, there were people who were of the peasant classes that would go out and hunt for sustenance, and that was like the hard Scrabble existence, and that would be a sense of like roughing it. But when you think of hunting, the kind of stuff that Joan was doing and other elites, it was really like a lot of pomp and circumstance. It was a lot of ritual, and it was not the kind of adventure going out alone in the woods, a man and his bow and arrow or whatever. It was instead this highly orchestrated kind of production that the people who worked to care for the animals and to care for the hunting grounds, they would arrange the spectacle ahead of time. So, yes, it was an adrenaline-inducing experience for those elite actors, but it was a simulation. It was a very complex simulation that was designed to inspire this adventurous spirit, but it was not real. A lot of the training that the animals would go through, that was hidden to a lot of the elites that would enjoy this. I have a suspicion that Joan knew a lot about the behind the scenes aspects of hunting, but there were a lot of elites that would have just shown up and been wowed by the whole thing. It was like their activity, their recreation, their way of having this production value in their lives that was like excitement. Exciting. Like, we have the movies, like, later on, hundreds of years from now, people will look back at some of, especially like the action movies, and just be scratching their heads about how could people have enjoyed this spectacle of violence, and will not really quite get the context of how these films, action movies, for example, are situated in our larger cultural conversation. So, same deal looking back on elite hunting. It's hard for us to really grasp what this meant to people, but we can try. And that's, the whole business of history. You cannot really time travel back to the past. You have to work with representations. And today we have a representation. I think we've had maybe like 4 or so episodes in the podcast about Joan's hunting, but he was really all about it. Like his cognomen, the way that he's remembered primarily is Joan el Cazador, Joan the Hunter. And it's a really interesting legacy because he has this dual, in our modern sensibility, this duality where he's known for hunting, which in the modern sensibility is something that's kind of violent and maybe associated with masculinity, but he's also known for luxuries and the arts, which is in our modern sensibility not frequently associated with violence and often coded as feminine. So that's one of the things that drew me to studying Joan, and I think we can see a lot of that emerging in the podcast as we keep going here throughout the year. Today we've got Joan, who's moved on from falcons. So yesterday he was excited about maybe getting a bunch of additional falcons from Mallorca. And today he's writing about hunting dogs. All right, so let's do the sourcing for this document first. The addressee is Pere d'Arts, and an English speaker might want to break that out into de artes. And this particular fellow is identified in the addressee line as al amat canceller e camerlain nostra. So, to our loved counselor and our chamberlain. So I am honestly having a bit of a struggle with understanding who gets to be called a chamberlain, because it really seems to me like this person is somewhere else, not in the household right now. And I thought the chamberlain was somebody who was by the side of the king and involved in arranging things, like maybe like a kind of like manager of the house. But here we definitely have somebody who's away, I think, or maybe not. Maybe he is just going to talk with people who have been far away. That's a different idea. I'm just not sure where this person is. So what the content of the letter is about is Joan has heard something. He's heard speak of a certain Carthusian monastery. Okay, maybe, and I'm really having a hard time sorting out the grammar here of like, because there's also ambassadors. Our ambassadors to a certain Carthusian monastery. And there's ambassadors. Somehow Joan has heard that there are some amazing hunting dogs from Savoy. So most of this letter is on folio 58R. There's a couple lines that start on 57V of Register 1751. And in the third line on folio 58R, we see aquellas partes de Savoia. So from Savoy, there are some hunting dogs. Something earlier on that line is bothering me. There's a capital N for Nores Menis, Carhabem. I can't quite figure out why there's a capital N there, but it's got to be some kind of proper name. Monastery. Oh, it's the name of the monastery. So the monastery's name is Nores Menis. And, all right, we're going to have to figure that one out. I just figured that out in the middle of recording. So in the show notes, I know the show notes are delayed. The show notes will eventually have the more information, if I can find it, about this particular monastery. And so they have dogs from Savoy. Oh, I don't know what's happening. And so I get the general sense of this, but exactly what's going on is still very opaque to me. And guess what? The AI OpenClaw process is pretty much generating the same level of understanding. So I will give, okay, this one is one of the registers that went through the OpenClaw pipeline, and I will give it credit for landing on the translation of Mostines and Mostines as mastiffs. So we're talking about dogs. So line 5 specifies 2 good male dogs and 3 good or beautiful female dogs. So that's what Joan wants. He wants 5 dogs total, and they're mastiffs. And I wasn't quite sure of this, and I put the words into the diccionario, and it didn't return any results for either MOSTINS or MOSCINS. So I was like, I think it's a dog. But I couldn't be sure, and I'm still not sure. But the OpenClaw pipeline returned a pretty clear result of mastiff as translation. And it turns out that if you do an English to Catalan translation and you start with mastiff, you get mosti or masti. So that's close enough for me to run with it. So Joan wants some cool hunting dogs from this monastery, and they have gotten them from Savoy, I guess. You know, Savoy hunting dogs. Supposed to be good, seems. So, basically, we're still in this hunting mood from Joan. Same kind of stuff I was talking about yesterday, about I guess he's feeling better. We have in the probata that Dominus Rex mandavit mihi Petro de Beniore, so we don't have any sign of an intermediary. So I think this is Joan himself. This isn't some vice chancellor taking care of everyday business. This is Joan saying, I want my hunting dogs. I want 5 of them. I want the ones from Savoy. These monks have them. Go get them. And he's telling his chamberlain to do that. And then what's funny is there's this little addendum. So we have this interesting, it's in his secret seal register, but then for some reason Joan feels that there has to be, it's not that it's his feeling, it's that something about this document compared to the one we were looking at yesterday requires a ring. So it's the secret seal, and then there's the date. I'm looking at on this folio the end of line 7 and into line 8. So we've got at the end of line 7, somsig, and then it continues, subsignada ab nostra petite anel. So with his little ring, he's signed it. Okay, so when you're trying to procure hunting dogs, you need to have your little ring. And when you're getting your falcons from Mallorca, you don't. Not quite sure how that works, but maybe it has to do with how the addressee for yesterday's letter was a procurador, and this person is a chamberlain. I don't know. But after the part about his little ring, there's this addendum saying, we're also asking if you have some falcons. So, falcons de guisa. What does that mean? Is that a type of falcon, or is that a place? Falcons de Guisa, Guisa. I don't know. So a lot of kind of specialized medieval hunting information in this document. That's someone who knows and has read more about medieval. I've done a little bit because it was Joan's thing, hunting, but I have not done enough to really feel like I understand all the things being brought up here. Like, I know that there were definitely like prestigious dog breeds and places that were known for breeding really great hunting dogs, but I think someone who's really steeped in this subject matter would know about Savoy and maybe even know about the monastery being mentioned in this article and be able to really understand why Joan had heard tell of these amazing hunting dogs that he's asking his chamberlain to go purchase. But yeah, I mean, I'm inclined to think that Joan is feeling better because he's making plans for his next recreational hunting adventure, I think, building up his stable. So he's hopeful. I think he's hopeful that he's going to survive this and pull through. So it's May 18th, and a couple days ago I mentioned that the rumor mill outside, as measured by a letter that one merchant sends to the ambassador to Pisa, the rumor mill outside is that Joan is not getting better. But I think, I don't know, if he was really like not gonna survive, I just don't know if he'd be moving forward like this with these purchases of hunting dogs and hunting birds. So yeah, we'll see what else we can figure out as we continue to look at a document a day. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Historian's Notebook, Season 1, Molt cara companiona. If you are leaving with more questions than you arrived with, I've done my job. Remember, the motto of the Historian's Notebook is dissatisfaction guaranteed, and a special guarantee of that for anybody who was hoping to get better information about medieval hunting. Sorry. But there's a lot you can read out there. I'll put some things in the bibliography for today's episode. Visit the website to see an image of today's document and additional show notes, and listen again tomorrow to hear about the next day in the first year of the reign of King Joan I of Aragon and Queen Violante de Bar. In the meantime, take care.